Now, today for my informative speech, we're going to be covering America's socialist history. It's layered, it's kind of complicated, and just like a sandwich, it's a worker made. Now, I know that I'm not a teacher, I'm not a professor, or any official authority on the subject matter, but I have been studying it for the last 3 years, and I hope that with all the time that I've put into it, I'm capable of explaining a relatively new topic to all of you in front of me today, and I hope that we can all learn a little bit of something from it. So, today we're going to be tackling the subject of American socialist history through the lens of the tactics and demographics which existed in each unique time period. So, what I'm hoping to do is inform you of the three major periods, that being the white electoral socialism, the minority-based revolutionary socialism, and the united intersectional mixed socialist movement of the 21st century. Now, let us enter in to the exciting and continuing history of American socialism. Now, the earliest form of American socialism is best described from the immigration of Polish and Germans into the United States, in which they brought with them not only their own personal culture, but a culture and ideal of how to best handle the political sphere, leading to a major focus on electoral politics and the use of rather Republican ideology. So, according to Thomas F. George's 2008 book, Modernized Republicanism, The Radical Agenda of Socialists in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, 1905 to 1917, he states that socialists of the early 20th century sought the same ends of American society as 18th century Republicans, only the means changed from private to public ownership. So, in the same way that originally many of the Republican movements in the 18th century were trying to, through the system, at least starting through the system, reform the society from going from feudal ownership into private ownership, these same politicians were trying to now change it from private ownership to public ownership, all through the use of electoral and diplomatic procedures, with very little revolutionary presence being felt within the movement. Now, this American socialism best matched the Eurocentric nationalism with a red aesthetic at the time. And while this tends to be the trend of early American socialism, the Eurocentric propriety falls away rather quickly, with it mostly ending by the mid to early 50s. Which then brings us to the midpoint of socialism, which emerged through the Cold War with a basis in minority groups and revolutionary structures. Now, the 50s and 60s of American socialism were mostly led by the Black Panther Party, the American Indian Movement, and also Latinx trade unions. Now, with these being the leading groups, these three groups were all focused on creating secondary power structures. Secondary power structures meaning that they are attempting to fulfill the services that would be provided by a state, but on their own without the use of the larger state that surrounds them. So the best examples of this are the Red Nation tribunals, which were a court of indigenous people to try matters regarding indigenous people, and the Legal Aid Foundation of the Black Panther Party, which was used as a public defense of sorts for African American people. Now, in a Daryl Robertson 2016 article, The Black Panther Party and the Free Breakfast for Children program, Black Panther members, he states that Black Panther Party members understood that in order to advance their political goals, Black men and women needed to be able to sustain themselves, which brings us to the first visual aid that I have today. That being a picture from the Free Breakfast for Children program, which is a perfect example of a secondary power structure, as they were trying their best to provide what food they could for the disenfranchised people around them. Now, while these people were focused mostly on revolutionary action and the creation of secondary power structures, and the first group was focused mostly on electoral politics and working within the existing power structures, you would then think that there's a big split between the two socialist movements of today. However, we see the exact opposite, with the newest form of American socialism being based on a united racial presence and a mixture of electoral and revolutionary politics. Now, this current movement has strong ethnic diversity, as seen by this picture. There's people with African phenotypes, Latin phenotypes, and Asian phenotypes, but all of them hold deep intersectionality, which leads to them understanding the tie between social and labor issues, creating a mix between electoral and revolutionary politics to address these issues, which is best represented by the Party for Socialism and Liberation, as they have set up both mutual aid networks, like the Black Panther Party, and, as reported by Liberation News in an article written by Liberation staff, have a presidential candidate currently running with their name being present on 15 ballots, 15 states' ballots. Now, this all represents years upon years of experience in organizing, all to create the moment that we see today. Now, today, my mission was to inform you on the American socialist history beneath our very noses. And we covered the three main periods of American socialism: the white electoral period, the most oppressed organizing in a revolutionary manner, and the newest ethnic and theoretically mixed politics of today. I thank you for listening, and I hope, just like a sandwich, this talk was both satisfying and leaving you wanting more.